Hello and welcome to the Winning Agenda's coverage of Twilight Struggle, the second Reddit online tournament for 2019. I just listened back to my last game and the FX volume was a little loud, so turn that down just a fraction, because we don't want that sweet ambient sound to be overtaking my voice, which I'm sure you're all here. So anyway, let's set up 4-4-2. This is a pretty dreadful hand. So we're playing 60 minutes as per this tournament. Pretty dreadful hand in many ways, because they're pretty much all red cards. Thankfully, none of them red cards that we just straight up can't play on turn one. All of them are able to be mitigated, but they're reasonably low ops. Remaining abdication, obviously that's pretty much blank, but we'd like to play it earlier in the turn in case our opponent does have independent reds, rather than giving them the free go at that. Remaining abdication into independent reds, into Truman Doctrine potentially, if it has no other targets, can turn into AVP in a couple of scores, so potentially 2, maybe 3 VPs if all of that happens very quickly over the course of the game, so it's not irrelevant to do that early. But anyway, in terms of headlines here, so I guess the bottom line of that is that's playable. This is playable early on. If we lose the war, so be it, as long as we're not red scared, or purged rather. It's not too bad and we can mitigate the damage. Either way, win or lose. Also Pact's obviously playable. NASA, again, if we go into Egypt, which we probably are going to do here since we have Suez Crisis anyway, it's not too bad. Nuclear Testbed's a nice one. Fidel, whatever, that you have to play that as the US a lot of the time in the early war. But I'm going to headline CIA. It's unusual to do that, given... Okay, well that was fortunate. That did kick us out of the Western Middle East. I mean, we do have Suez, so it wouldn't have been the end of the world anyway. And we could also have gone NASA early to give ourselves the coup target in Egypt, which also wouldn't have been too bad. This is handy to know that have Asia scoring, also handy to know they have independent reds for the aforementioned reason. Interesting they didn't headline Red Scare Purge and instead chose to headline Arab-Israeli War, perhaps holding that for turn 2. And fearing defectors as well. I guess, they have potentially want to try and set up the domination in Asia, so wanting as many ops as possible. Nothing particularly troubling for them here. Their duck and cover is actually quite a good one, obviously, to have on turn 1 as the Soviets, because you can control DEFCON easily. And Indo-Pakistani war is good to know about, because it means that we won't play too heavily into Pakistan despite the Asia scoring. That also may influence what we do early. I think our opponent's saying they haven't seen the USA start with CIA before, which may be true, because it's obviously a DEFCON suicide card, but it's also really good AR1 because it allows us to gain some tempo here, or right, headline on turn, say, allows us to gain some tempo, particularly since our hand is very bad. So the question is, with our CIA, the reason that I'm taking so long examining this hand is to think about where they're going to go. Obviously, they're going to prioritize Asia. We have Korean War, which is a little unfortunate, but it means we can use that early and maybe use the ops to take South Korea if we're lucky and it fails. They don't have US, Japan, neither do we, so that's not going to get any better this turn, so we can just pretty much, it's a wash no matter when we do it. Asia scoring, sorry, not Asia scoring, Indo-Pakistani War means that we're not going to be playing into India or Pakistan particularly soon, although going to Afghanistan is still good to give ourselves access to that region. So what I'm going to do is, exactly as I just said, I'm still going to go into Afghanistan to keep access to this region in the case of the Iran coup, and then I'm going to go into Malaysia with at least 1 influence, AR1 probably, depending on what their play is here. Take a bit more time to keep thinking about their hand whilst the clock's on them. Okay, socialist government coup on Iran, assume. Successful removing us, but no more than that, which is good. So we can take Iran back here. We can even overprotect it, but we're not going to do that. I think we're just going to give ourselves the last coup, and we're going to take Iran. It's not necessary to do that. So take Egypt. I know that we're going to lose it to NASA, but take Egypt, go into Malaysia is an option. Let's just think about this, because just reflexively going back into Iran is not necessarily the best play here. So Iran is going to be good for protecting us from Indo-Pakistani war. It does mean that we can potentially even try and take Pakistan this turn, so I don't mind that since they have no access to North Asia. We also don't want to give them access to that because they have Asia scoring. With that being the case, I am going to go there, Malaysia, to give us access to Thailand as well. If they coup Iran, we take Thailand, and then we can take Afghanistan and Pakistan next turn, depending on how their coup goes. Not too bad. We can also trigger Suez Crisis this turn. No special relationship, so there's no benefit to us holding Suez Crisis for longer in the turn, so we can play that earlier. The only timing issue is going to be around when we lose this influence in Israel. I think a lot of that timing is going to depend on what happens with this next coup, presumably that they're going to make in the next action round. Okay, so we're going to lose the last coup because they're using the back and cover, but they did it in the order and the extra victory point, which is nice. And we get to take Iran back. So we can go to an Iran, Thailand here. Don't get mill-ups this turn, which is 2 VPs we're down. The question is, do you want to also go? Now we definitely want to take Iran because we want to deny them access. We definitely want to take Thailand. And then over the rest of the turn, depending on how they go, they may think we have Middle East scoring because we're putting so much effort into recontrolling Iran here. So they may look to spend some influence either taking Lebanon or shoring something else up here. So for that reason, I think we'll hold on to Nasser until later in the turn, particularly since we've lost our opportunity to coup Egypt now. Suez Crisis, we are going to play soon, but it's going to require us to put one influence in the Western Middle East, so it's really a 2-op card at that point. The 2-ops is still going to be useful to take Pakistan or Afghanistan. The other option is to play Korean War. So we've got essentially 4 ops free, 2 from Fidel, 2 from Suez Crisis. We've got another op free here from Romanian Abdication. Okay, so they've elected to take the neutral from Asia scoring. It's good for us. I mean, look, we've shored up a lot of Asia here. That also takes off the timing pressure. Since they have Indo-Pakistani war, could have easily picked up 1 VP for Afghanistan in exchange for 1 operations, or 1 influence point rather. So I think let's move from our opponent there. With that being the case, I don't love giving away the VPs from Korean War at any stage. I mean, it's a really good Soviet card. I mean, I think a lot of US players think, it's not too bad to let it just happen. But I really don't like it happening before US-Japan Pact. I don't like the 50-50 2 VPs. So that may, in fact, be a space for us this turn. With no more... so knowing what they have in hand, just going back to that quickly. We know they've got independent reds, so we don't want to give them that. They've still got Red Scare in hand, Indo-Pakistani War, and Olympic Games. So Independent Reds, Olympic Games, Indo-Pakistan War, Red Scare. Yeah, those are their 4 cards. Okay. So none of those events are particularly scary. They're not going to let them in anywhere unexpected, but we do want to play the Romanian Abdication. Now, so what I'm going to do with that is go into Egypt, I think. We can Suez Crisis Nasser more easily on later ARs. Now with our Suez Crisis, we can potentially go 1-2 in Libya. If our opponent does draw NATO and play it next turn, then they are going to trigger NATO, which makes special relationship better. So there is some downside to us allowing Suez Crisis to fire without repairing the UK here, but I think that's enough down the track that we don't need to obviously automatically place 2 from Suez Crisis into the UK. We can developing in the Middle East for now. And obviously getting rid of this gives us a lot more of a chance of getting to France. That we don't have to hold any 3-ups cards for blockade is nice. Although I am very scared about this red scare that our opponent appears to be holding for next turn. Okay. Interesting. So what we might do then, since we lost Lebanon, is trigger Suez Crisis. We probably could have played into Jordan first there, actually. That may have been an error. Yeah. Let's place 2 in Libya. And do we want to put... I think we probably want to play into Spain. But look, we know our opponent doesn't have Middle East scoring, so we're in no rush to really solidify our position beyond what's here. I do want to get the one into Iraq, I think. Oh, it's not as urgent because we've got the Afghanistan influence. I mean, you can see how important that influence from CIA created has been this turn, on keeping our access to this whole region. Arguably, I mean, obviously our opponent only rolling well enough to kick us out was important, rather than being able to control around themselves. But being able to play back in was huge, and potentially turned what could have been an easy domination for our opponent by steamrolling through Pakistan and India while holding Indo-Pakistani war. It turned it from that into Asia being scored neutrally, which was for us. And those VPs from duck and cover, you know, they're not irrelevant. Ending turn 1, if scoring happens on 1 VP, because they're going to get the VPs from mill-ups, that's still not a bad position to be in as the US, with no regions that are showing any issues for us. Yeah, I think I do want to space this Korean War. When rush to be allowing that to fire at this point. Just don't want to give away the VPs. And later on, as I said, once US-Japan Pact is presumably played, we'll be in a better position to allow that to fire. And Taiwan is not an irrelevant country, obviously, with and being something that USSR players appear reasonably quite attractive to take Taiwan. Our next priorities, once we can figure out where de Gaulle is, will be to take France and then try and shore up a Europe domination position. For that reason, yep, so independent reds here, good that we got the Iranian abdication out of the way early, because it gives us, as I said, quite a lot of value now from doctrine, even if our opponent draws it and manages to trigger it without any battlegrounds being affected by it. It's an adjacent country that will give us a victory point whenever Europe is scored. Okay, so now that they've played into South Korea, I'm a lot more minded to actually trigger Korean War. Because they've now dedicated resources and are potentially going to take it anyway. So us avoiding it doesn't have as much of a benefit. Okay. That's unfortunate. But this does give us 2 ops. So now we have to use these ops very wisely, and in a way that will actually get us some benefit over the course of the game. For that reason, I think taking European non-battleground is probably a good use of 1 influence. we're going to lose Egypt, so probably moving into either Iraq or into Pakistan is not the worst. I think one influence in Pakistan here is actually pretty good, so I'm going to do one in Spain and one in Pakistan. Just so that our opponent can't keep us off India as well. We know they've got Indo-Pakistani war, but have they played it already? No, I don't think they did. No, they've been holding on to it because they know that we're in the area. So they've got Indo-Pakistani war on Red Scare here. Presumably they're going to play Indo-Pakistani war. Presumably they wanted to use it to take Pakistan. See what they do with it now. Yep. We can either hold Nasser because Middle East hasn't been scored yet, and we're happy to give them Fidel. Now that Indo-Pakistani war is going to be reshuffled, we could either send Fidel to space, or we could take Afghanistan to threaten to war them out as well. I definitely don't want to be putting more influence into Pakistan at this stage, I don't think, particularly since Fidel won't allow us to take it. I don't think the one from NASA is going to be really good enough for us to want to play it now. Denying the USSR Fidel is quite good, but I do think that taking Afghanistan here is useful. What are our other options? We can play one into South Korea, threaten to take it with a 4-up. We can play one into Iraq to threaten to give us access to Saudi Arabia and Jordan as our best opportunity for a non-battle if we want to try and dominate. I think that's actually quite important to get in there. Spacing is nice. Yeah, look, I actually think let's space Fidel. Because those first couple of VPs from space are actually really sweet. So now I think we can afford to defect as the Red Scare because otherwise we're going to lose West Germany, so we just pretty much have to do that. I mean, we could have waited a little while and appeared that we weren't so ready with our headline, but look, we had to do it. So we're going to hold D-Style as our blockade card, and then we're going to have to blockade ourselves, so D-Style is getting reshuffled, which is unfortunate, but, you know, at the very least, getting Red Scared, and they're not getting Thailand off us with Vietnam revolts, so that's nice. Might get Red Scared AR1, who knows, in which case we have to hold blockade. And then we're going to have to space D-Style. Either way, D-Style is going back into the deck. The other option is that we can UN intervention the blockade, or we can UN intervention the D-Style to give ourselves 3-ups, which may be the better option. But then we have to hold the blockade. So, yeah. Depends whether the Red Scare comes out this turn, I think, really, as to what we do there. So where do we take from? I think we take those two, and from Romania. Take from Austria, because we can assume that Truman's going to come at some point, and it's most likely that it's going to hit the Romania. So let's deny them the access to a non-battleground country for 2 operations points. Panama. Interesting cooing Panama there rather than cooing the Middle East. So again, we've got no access to ops, which is unfortunate. Doesn't look like NATO is going to be triggered. They have Red Scare. They may also have NATO and just be holding on to their ops cards. Who's aren't really working. Influence from Iran was still relevant, but yes, certainly not taking countries from us. What are our priorities? One priority is France, obviously. If they have Truman and de Gaulle, then they're going to be a lot more willing to fight us for that. I think we want to give them just yet in the turn. I want to hold that. We may want to blockade here, just to get the D-Style out of the way. Although, having the UN intervention allows us to deal with the blockade as well. Just in case they do Red Scare us, I'm in an action round. Just place from special relationship. into Iraq, just to give ourselves access to Jordan to threaten that domination. And I think we need to flush, rather than just allowing them to keep spreading in Asia willy-nilly. It's getting dangerous. If they get these 4 battlegrounds, it's going to be hard for us potentially to kick them out. So the options are either we put 1 into France and then trying to take it with a 2-ops card, which will only be upset by de Gaulle, or we put 1 into India. I'm going to go to France, partly because Asia's been scored, but also because I think it, given that we're 2 ops away from dominating here, I think it actually puts a little bit more pressure. And if they do then have de Gaulle, then so be it. And then restore that with Comic-Con, so it's not the end of the world. Okay, decoll is not great. So, going to have to use Comic-Con now. Thankfully we did have a 3-ops card to do that with. Can't really afford to UN intervention here because having 2 hand size cutting cards played on 1 turn, just being 1 whole action round behind is really bad. So we're going to have to play UN intervention for the operations, unless we're UN intervention blockade, in which case we'll be spacing D-style. So yeah, we may decide that that's better than having 1 op from blockade and 1 op from UN intervention. It may be better to just have the 1 op from UN intervention and the D-style in the bin. The downside of that is that blockade gets reshuffled. It's probably unlikely that that's better for us, because either way D-style just ends up in the bin and gets reshuffled. Either way, we have a pretty iffy turn coming up here. So if our opponent has de Gaulle now, it puts us in a bit more of an ordinary situation because we can't afford to recontrol France immediately, unless we give them D-style, which we're obviously not going to do. And I say obviously not going to do because then we would be forced to blockade ourselves. Unless our opponent plays containment on their last action round. But I don't think we can rely on that happening. Yeah, so it's a kind of interesting point here for our opponent. They've got now a pretty strong position. They can flip Thailand with the China card. They can fight us anywhere in Southeast Asia. They're only 1 op away from controlling South Korea. We've got better access to India and Pakistan in the sense that they're an influence ahead in Pakistan and only 1 op away from. But I think they'd probably be loath to use the China card here to flip Thailand, just because giving it to us is not great. Particularly with Pakistan so up in the air, since they don't know where Indo-Pakistani war is going to end up. So they use Red Scare instead. Okay, so I mean, like I'm really happy with that, forcing them to use so many influence points in Iraq there. I know that it was a precious influence point that we put in there, but that was really not too bad an action round for us. It looks like they might have Middle East scoring, so I don't really want to give them Nasser until towards the end. It doesn't look like de Gaulle's coming. So let's use Formosan to take another country in the Middle East, so that if they spend 2 ops on Egypt next turn, then we're still even. Although Jordan, yeah, I think we have to do that because otherwise we have no way to, if they go into Jordan next turn instead, then we have no way to even up the country count. With just given the ops value of our cards. Whereas now, if they take Egypt, we can NASA. We're still stuffed, like we can put one into Saudi Arabia, but we don't have a 2-up card to finish controlling it. So perhaps we shouldn't have played into Jordan there. One of those influence probably gone elsewhere. Well, I mean, this gives us something to work towards. Yeah, I don't mind this. So we can now hold on to NASA till our last action round. And we can UN intervention. Red Scare's gone. We're not going to be forced to hit ourselves. Okay. An intervention to put one into Canada, then we can finish Canada to give ourselves NORAD from turn 3, which I really quite like, especially with so many countries where we have combined influence at the moment. Most particularly Thailand and Pakistan, although that does give us quite a strong incentive to play one into South Korea. Hopefully, our opponent is too focused on the Middle East to remember about that influence in South Korea. End of the turn, and then hopefully we have an opportunity to go in there. Future NORAD turns, we can triggering NORAD as the USSR is always risky. This reason, because the tempo shift that it creates in the game can be quite immense. Okay, this is interesting. Reaction rounds with... So I assume that means that they have Middle East scoring, which means that I'm probably going to use my 2 influence from blockade to actually break the countries. So we'll trigger the unit first. And so which one do we want to break? I think we want to now put one into... Going into Lebanon or into Saudi Arabia. Putting one into Lebanon is interesting because then we can actually control it. Alright, influence, but putting one to Saudi Arabia denies a victory point. They do have Middle East scoring. I'm saying all these things based on that. Putting the one in Saudi Arabia also is good for later for AWOC sales to Saudis and also for NORAD. But I think the one in Lebanon is actually better because it's immune to Muslim revolution as well. So let's go like that. Even scoring here. So now with our last, this is good in some senses, assuming that this is Middle East scoring from them. We can go NASA into Canada and South Korea. Okay, perhaps it's not Middle East scoring if it's taking this long to think about. I just can't think of any other reason why they would have played containment on the second last action round instead. They had? 5-year plan, I see. Okay, for Europe perhaps. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. I guess that is certainly another reason. So Middle East looks like we might be in a little bit of a struggle. But this is very nice because we can at least fight back in Asia a little bit here. We can also break Pakistan as well with NORAD, so yeah. Going into turn 3, only 1 down, it's certainly not too bad at all. Okay, so we're not going to be fighting for we are not going to be fighting for much in the Middle East, I don't think, but said we headline Red Scare here. Does put our opponent in a little bit of a bother in terms of us then, if they coup, being able to take South Korea and Pakistan from them. There's not a lot of opportunity for us to do a lot in the Middle East, although we can take Lebanon. Although then it only takes them 1 op to take Syria, and what does that then put us at? 4-4 on the country count? Yeah, look, I think that might actually be the way to go. other options: to hold on to Red Scare to take Israel, even up the battleground countries, although we can presume that they're going to headline US-Japan Pact, which is pretty bad. We do have to even up Asia quick smart. Got to even up both Asia and the Middle East, which could potentially be scored this turn. It is a slightly rough one. I do think we have to headline Red Scare. Do socialist governments upset us too much? It's not great. Yeah, I'm just thinking about whether it's really defectors or Red Scare, I think. Socialist governments does hurt if we headline Red Scare a little bit, although less so because then it makes it easier for us to repair, particularly since we have a 4-up card. It's for us to deny them the ops here. CNS is a pretty weak headliner. We certainly got away with that. Can look to hold defectors now as well. Potentially spacing De Gaulle and Fidel, depending on how the turn pans out. I mean, that leaves us only 6 ops to try and negate their advantages in both Asia and the Middle East, so it's unlikely, although we don't know how many ops they now have in their hand as a result of being Red Scared. And if we can get out of the early war with our advantage in Europe intact and them not having access to Central America, I think that's a reasonable outcome. It'd be interesting to see if they coup here. If they don't, then I think I will coup Angola. Because cooing Egypt is pretty bad. It may be that I coup Lebanon. But anyway, okay, so they're cooing, so we've got NATO. Interesting that they didn't coup Libya, but I guess they do really want access to the Middle East. So NORAD, let's go. Very, very interesting one. We could go into Iraq and then score the Middle East. We could go into Pakistan and then flip Pakistan. I think since we have Middle East scoring, it's just really important that we break Iraq. Happy with that, actually. I'm going to be very pissed if they have... Because I'm just thinking through our other options to try and even out things in the Middle East. I think it's just too difficult for us to try and take Israel given the paucity of ops in our hand, and even if we do flip Lebanon with our 4-op card, it's too difficult. It's too easy for them to repair the country count in Syria. So we're going to take the punt that they don't have Asia scoring, and we're just going to get Middle East out of the way.
The challenge of the 20th century is the challenge of human relations.
And now we turn our attention to Asia. Presumably so do they, and so, you know, it may be too late for South Korea, sadly. We have, you know, a few other options to try and repair things in Asia, certainly in terms of country count here. We've got 3 countries that we can take for 1 op each, as well. And we've got Afghanistan, which is both a non-battleground country and for us. In terms of De Gaulle, it probably is worth us spacing here. Interesting that they chose to space. I guess they may be fearful of us trying to trim them out, but I think they're too far ahead anyway in those areas for us to really want to do that. So let us take South Korea, I think, yeah. Yeah, it puts Asia back. I mean, it's quite a stable country for the US. It's only really Ussuri River skirmish that can cause us problems there now. And having it late in the late war for Soviets shoot down KAL 007 is very handy. Gonna have to speed up the pace a little bit because we've 6 minutes left, so we'll keep that in mind as well. I think for the rest of the turn, we'll hold defectors for next turn. Get rid of all these cards. Truman, probably want to keep in the deck because I don't see it really, like we don't need Romania right now, and I don't see it really giving us too much benefit. Okay, UN interventioning Marshall Plan is probably about as good as it gets, I think, for the USSR. So now we'll just even up country count around Asia, I think. Just flush out a few more ops from our opponent. I think we have access to more countries more easily than they do. To take Malaysia, or to probably take Vietnam first, I think. Even though Vietnam Revolts is still there in the deck. And it's probably better to just take Malaysia. I mean, the good thing about taking Vietnam is it denies them a card that only costs them 1 op, but I think just give randomly them being able to flip it with Vietnam Revolts is just not great. And Malaysia accomplishes similar things in terms of protecting Thailand from brush war. And they're now, you know, reasonably well set in North Asia, although us having both Afghanistan and Iran at the moment does make Pakistan, well, makes Pakistan and India both still vulnerable to the war. Okay, so it looks like they are playing for the Asia scoring, and I'm happy to just keep evening up this country count, forcing resources out of them for as long as we can, just be dedicating very minimal resources to that. Middle East out of the way. I mean, we do have some problems in the mid-war regions, but there are enough cards. Okay, interesting. China cards come out. There are enough relevant cards to allow us to deal with that effectively, I think. I am loath to play Fidel now that we're moving into the mid-war and we have no presence anymore in Central America, but I don't think we can afford to give them Thailand here. Very bold play, which means, look, we may have to play defectors. We're just going to have to bite the bullet on Fidel, I think. Hope that they don't have too many high ups cards. I mean, if they have another 4 up. Got it. We're going to have to rely on the realign them out of Cuba strategy. Hopefully some puppet governments next turn will come to our aid. Okay, that's very nice. Very nice way to finish up the early war. And it means that we have a free influence that we can send where? Possibly to Botswana. Protect our access to that region. Certainly not to anywhere in Europe. Mexico, because we don't want to give them an attractive coup target there. Asia's still in the mix. I don't think there's anywhere really aggressively that we can play with 3 battlegrounds to 3. And take Japan, although we haven't got US-Japan. Sorry, we haven't got Formosan. Taking Taiwan is not particularly useful. I'm going to go into Botswana. Alright, so a very powerful hand for us in terms of the neutral that we have, both Brush War and ABM Treaty, and we've got puppet governments and socialist governments, which is nice to know that we're not going to be confronting that in the headline, although Europe scoring is out of the way. Estyw River Skirmish is pretty nice here as a headline, I think. Puppet government's obviously really nice as well, but I think we'll do that later in the turn when we can't be cooed. Yeah, let's really try and cause some mayhem here. Quagmire, very unfortunate. So what do we want to do in that case? 2 in Pakistan, 2 in North Korea. Some of their tempo away, but yeah, obviously really sad that we lose the NORAD as well. Wah. Sad, sad times. So puppet governments, even though I mentioned obviously the Cuba realignment play, with South America wide open at the moment, we're just going to use puppet governments for that, especially since we've got ABM treaty and brush war, and we know that only junta is out there to allow them to attack that, and once DEFCON's down to 2, presumably after this action round, that won't be too much of a problem. Do we ditch de Gaulle or socialist governments? I think we ditch de Gaulle. Just because it places that influence, whereas socialist governments only removes, and so therefore can easily be dealt with itself. They do have 2 ARs here, but they're obviously considering the fact that Asia's wide open and they've got to do a coup, but you know, they've got 2 ARs to do it, so be fine. Okay, so they're not doing a coup. Interesting. There instead, and give us the VPs. Get rid of de Gaulle first, as we discussed. Okay, we got out of Quagmire, that's good. Would have been really sad to lose too much more tempo on this turn, given how tasty our hand is. Puppet governments, so I think we'll probably go 1 in Zaire, even though it's a little risky now. Just because it gives us this really sweet reline on Angola. If they don't go in there this turn, which I presume they won't, given that they still require the 1 in North Korea. Sad. So sad that we lost the NORAD there on turn 4 and everything, because so many sweet targets for NORAD. They did go into Zaire. Okay. Unfortunate, but still useful. Also sad to lose Alliance for Progress, but not the end of the world. I will take 3 relevant countries in South America. Take Argentina rather than Chile, just because of Allende. I'd rather shore up the other countries first, and then do Chile if we can. Yeah, I think it's more important to do that than worry about the Middle African countries, especially since we have ABM treaty and we can attack them that way. I think we'll probably attack Zaire and then go for the realignment using ABM treaty. So we'll try and shore up South Africa and Botswana. We've also got brush war to try and pop somewhere as well. Pakistan looking like a reasonably attractive target for brush war. Egypt's obviously not a very attractive target because of Sadat anyway. Panama, perhaps. Algeria, perhaps also. We do have to get presence in Africa next AR though, so I think we're going to do that before we worry about the South America stuff. In terms of priority, Nixon unfortunately is not going to get us the VPs. One small step is going to get us these sweet VPs though, so I think we might just do that.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not
those are some pretty important VPs.
what your country can do for you.
Being able to skip our way in there is nice.
Depends
what happens here. Okay. Alright, so they want to go for the Dom. Which I don't really mind because we're still going to coup them anyway. So we can now look to realign them out of South Africa instead of out of Angola using the ABM treaty. And then probably brush war another one of the African battlegrounds. So nice because it means we only need to dedicate 1 influence to Africa this turn, or this action round. So let's go 1, we'll get presence in South America. I think on both sides of the continent. So we want to try and get to a position of of controlling South America this turn, if we can. So we'll just count up our ups to make sure that we can do that. If we trigger both ABM Treaty and Brush War, then we're going to need all of our remaining ops from Nixon and One Small Step, which means we can't event that in order to effect the control. The other option, obviously, is that we don't trigger Brush War, but I really like both the 2 VPs from mill ops that we'll get if we trigger Brush War, plus the potential to flip a relevant to give up. Which one? I think it's probably Algeria. Probably Algeria, ABM Treaty, Angola. Although, actually, having said what I said about mill-ups, of course, I get the mill-ups from ABM Treaty as well. So that does make Brush War slightly more enticing as a 3-ops card instead, but we'll see. I mean, it really depends how many VPs I think the two influence points that I get from One Small Step are going to be versus eventing it. I think since there's so much spreading and so much counterplay going on at the moment and so much open to us in terms of where we can use influence right now, it's probably the case that we should not event it, but I really do like getting to that space before them. Okay, so there's no pressure on us now. Oh yeah, because they are at animal in space, so there is still time pressure on us to do that. Well, look, I actually think this is the perfect opening to do this, so I'm just going to take those 2 VPs because I think they are really, really important to get. And because really on that AR there was nothing open in terms of really great scoring opportunities for them, like we're not really on the back foot right now. And if they're spacing Bear Trap halfway through their turn, I mean, maybe, they've played some pretty difficult cards early on, so it may well be that they are holding up some reasonable cards for later on. Duck and Cover, obviously, they played for a reason. It had a benefit for them in lowering DEFCON and allowing them to repair in Asia. Alliance for Progress, blank for us at that point, and was not going to stay blank, so that was the right timing for them, and Bear Trap they had to get rid of. But yeah, it's that Bear Trap play that indicates to me that either they're trying to sandbag some things for later in the turn, or they actually have quite a difficult hand to manage, and they were hoping to space again, which is, again, another reason why playing the One Small Step there was good. Okay, so I mean, this obviously forces a counterplay from us, which we don't mind. Asia scoring, how are we looking? We're fine for that to stay in the deck, I think, at this point. Lone Gunman. We'll get rid of. I think we're happy for Asia scoring to stay in. We don't have no-red anymore, so it's a little more difficult for us to have those sequencing plays of breaking control of a battleground country. So maybe let's get rid of Asia scoring, actually, because I think we're not going to get Japan in the mid-war. So it's always going to be us that's in danger of being on the back foot. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, ABM Treaty play, and we're going to coup, and we're going to do a big coup on... Sweet, because that got rid of their control. So they may now coup Botswana, it's possible. But if they don't, then we are going to use Nixon for some sweet, sweet relines on South Africa first. And then either Zaire or Cuba if we're successful, but we might need to use both on South Africa. Things go. Being a +1 is not, but by no means guaranteed to be successful. We're also still vulnerable to realigns on Argentina, which I'm very aware of.
Victory of might, but the vindication of right. Not peace at the expense of freedom, but both peace and freedom here in this hemisphere. And we hope around the world.
Some really great audio in this game.
That goal will be achieved.
Got the South Africa rear line. We've got to finish filling up South America. At some point, we want to try and deal with this, although now that we've used puppet governments for the South America access, which I have no regrets about. I think the Cuba rear line is a very much a... Cuba rear line and the Nigeria rear line are both perfectly acceptable uses of puppet governments, but if you've got open battlegrounds, you've really just got to go for those. It's far too powerful a card. Like using desalinization for those, for some sort of rear line in mid-war regions, it's just not. Yeah, it was very fortunate for us. I mean, look, unfortunate that Alliance for Progress comes out on turn 4. Unfortunate that we get quagmired to get our NORAD gone, but, you know, obviously very fortunate for us to get both Usuri and puppet governments, as well as 2 of the 3 big mid-war neutral events on turn 4. Okay, so they're going for that domination, which makes me think they probably have Africa scoring. So I'm not really willing to risk it on one die roll with the brush war on Algeria. Taking Sudan obviously relevant there for OPEC. So I'm going to realign. That very well indeed. Now they still have domination here, which kind of sucks. So we're just going to try and realign here. Okay, that worked out very well. I mean, they still have domination. Still worth 4 VPs, but we now have control of the whole of the south half of Africa, which is pretty sweet. And I'm now not going to use the brush war for the actual event, I don't think. Okay, yep. My draws have certainly been strong. I was just remarking on that. So the question is, do we use brush war for the event, or do we take Zaire and South Africa, or potentially Zaire? I mean, South Africa's not urgent at all. So we can take Zaire and I think I'm happy to brush war. Take Zaire. Still probably over control Venezuela. Apologies about the little there. Or maybe the one into Chile. Yeah, I mean, that is good. But I just really think the 1 VP and the possibility of flipping Algeria as much as the 3 ops at this point. Let's go with it this way. Southeast Asia scoring, we'll fill up those for 2 VPs this turn. We have some really, really sweet blue cards, which is very nice. We'll hold Ask Not because we're happy to deal with all this turn. Panama Canal returned is a decent headline, but I think we can't really go past Voice of America or grain sales instead. So, since Africa's yet to be scored, well, I mean, all the mid-war regions to be scored, having a coup in the headline phase is nice, plus the hand size cutting. Voice of America I also really like as an AR7 play instead. So, let's go with grain sales as a headline. So that to coup. To coup. So cooing Panama is nice. Cooing Colombia, obviously, we could do later in the turn. It's really a question of Panama, Algeria, or Nigeria. Since they have no access to Algeria, I'd rather go Algeria. Nigeria is always vulnerable to the rail lines and would be a little out on a limb, especially since they already have Cameroon. Panama, we have no presence.
Y esa parece ser la situación también en muchos otros países de Asia.
I think we want to try and dominate them in Africa. So, alright, and we roll a 6. So, I mean, our opponent definitely has some very reasonable grumbles about the rolls this game, but I think also, yeah, we have, I think, made the best use of what we've had available to us. And there have been quite a few things like the duck and cover plays and the China card play that worked out pretty well for us in terms of where we were heading. We don't obviously know exactly what options were available to our opponent at those times, but they certainly felt like they helped push us along a little bit to realign. Fair enough. Yeah, with the Brezhnev, that's obviously nice to be able to do that. And now I think we need to play the China card. They're just going out of the way. I'm pretty happy to use that. I mean, I was thinking, do I want to use the China card for these Southeast Asian countries this turn, but I don't really. It's just we've got so many 2-ops cards and we can use a 2-ops card there, so that's no worry. Ask not. Hopefully we can get rid of Central America scoring if we're very, very lucky with that next turn. We also have mill-ops at this point, so we're in good shape there. Domination in Africa because of the Botswana capture early on in the game. Okay, so they're happy to fight us, which is interesting. So maybe we do coup Colombia here. And then we've got a return for later, or do we cause them some more issues elsewhere? It's hard to say. I think we probably coup Colombia because we've also got access to Chile. They can obviously go into Uruguay then, but we've got the rail line. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to coup Colombia. Let's just do that. So they've got the coup back, but coupping back when you're under Brezhnev Doctrine is not the most appealing use of your very strong cards. Plus, they don't actually control Venezuela yet. Okay, they are coupping. Let's see how we go. A good coup. Okay, so perhaps we'll give up on that area then. We'll hope that they don't have South America scoring yet. We'll perhaps play Panama Canal returned later on, although Voice of America may also allow us to remove 2. Let's use Formosan to place our 2 in Southeast Asia. Get that scoring up. And then we'll just ditch that in the next AR. Hopefully they don't overprotect Venezuela. Panama Canal return could also be our headline next turn, potentially. Oh no, we won't have a chance to hold it because we're holding Arsenal. Anyway, forgot I said that. Will we? Oh, we will hold 2. Yes, we will. Okay, because we played the China card, of course. So it could be our headline next turn.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal.
So we'll dump that for 2 points, which is nice. I think, on turn 5, obviously, anytime you can be on 5 victory points, sorry, 10 victory points ahead on turn 5 as the US, you're pretty happy about that. Okay, South America scoring for a point, fair enough. I think we sort of felt like maybe they had that, but there wasn't really that much we could do about it, given the paucity of ops in our hand. We'll go to space now. This because we're not under heaps of pressure and we just want to dump that socialist governments. And then I'm going to play Camp David Accords. Spacing setup is interesting. Back. Space that. And then we've got the Voice of America on the last AR, which we may use to wipe them out of Africa. What can we do? We can wipe them out of Africa. We can take Venezuela back to neutral. I think wiping them out of this middle section of Africa is a very good use of 2 influence. Two out of Lebanon might also be quite a good use of time. Forcing them to dedicate some resources. So it could be 2 out of Lebanon, 1 out of Nigeria, 1 out of Cameroon. Headline Panama Canal returned and threatened to take Venezuela. That's not too bad. The other option is to take the 2 out of Brazil to really solidify the position in South America, but since that's just been scored, I'm not so worried about that. I mean, you could say the same for the Middle East. It gives them plenty of time to repair that with Syria, but...
Our goal is not the victory of might.
Yeah, maybe that is better.
Right.
Don't really want to allow them to have this rear line out of Brazil. It is always a real problem if your opponent has, if you control Brazil, but your opponent has Venezuela and influence in Brazil, because then going to Uruguay is just so risky for you.
That goal will be achieved.
Very sad that we didn't get our man in Earth orbit. Space in that socialist governments, but you know, can't complain. I think at the moment, Nigeria, Cameroon is assert. And then I think it is the 2 in Brazil. The Lebanon thing is cheeky, but arguably not as impactful as giving ourselves the opportunity to dominate South America quite comfortably by having these 3 countries pretty much sewn up. Probably want to put 2 into Peru or Uruguay next, just so that when Allende comes out, we can realign out of Chile. Putting the 2, doing all of that. Oh, okay, they use the influence. Interesting. It's a bit of sense. Perhaps preparing for OPEC, I'm not sure. Anyway, so we'll do as we discussed, I think. With that. Not the most impactful Voice America you'll ever see, but I think really solidifying our board position in the places that were important to us. I'm going to almost certainly take the 3. I know I said this in the last game I recorded, but I'm almost certainly going to take the 3 from Arms Race if I can. Missile Envy here. Are we going to lose the game by Missile Envying? So... So nuclear test ban's out of the way, so we're not going to get randomly realigned, but we can't get realigned anyway. Envy.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do.
We do need to deal with this. We will bury you.
Ask what you can do for your country.
To space that. Probably hold. Oh, hang on. Got Ascot. Probably could have headlined that. Get rid of these 4 terrible cards. Anyway, we can do that in an action round. Missile Envy, assuming that we get a card that we can do something with, will be handy for Arms Race. But if that does not eventuate, Arms Race is a 3-up card. Yeah, so query whether we hold on to D-Style here through shuffle. But I think Arsenal is the way to go.
A nivelul lui de trai material și spiritual al poporului.
So, what did we get? I just turned my head away. Missile envy got us Cuban Missile Crisis, I see. Okay, so they're not going to be cooing this turn. DEFCON is 2, so no ops, but no real opportunities for us to coup except in Sudan. Yeah, right. Okay, so perhaps going for a Middle East control. Well, let's arms race is not going to net us the VPs this time. So let us not chase Nigeria. Instead, this one to go. Probably into Chile now that Allende's out of the way. Maybe into Mexico. Yeah, I think we'll actually go into Mexico. Assuming that they're probably not going to be cooing much for the rest of the turn. And that region is still unscored. And I think we will coup them out of Sudan. I mean, for that reason, we could have held on to the arms race, but we did need to take Iran back there because we can't afford to give them Middle East control. It's just far too many VPs. Already not particularly happy with our position here, but hopefully Mr. Sadat will help out with that when he comes back from space. I think we probably want to ask not on the next action round. Potentially, Panama Canal returned on our last action round, but it really depends what we get from this ask not. Shuttle diplomacy, not an irrelevant event here, given the state of the two regions that it affects. Obviously far less impactful in the Middle East, but if we can manage to take Japan this turn, then shuttle diplomacy may be something that we consider. We have a non-battleground advantage in Asia. Potentially not anymore. That's unfortunate. Well, that certainly causes us a little bit of the sads. So fixing up our position. Still dominating in Africa, which presumably our opponent is going to score this turn. And looks like we may struggle to get the free action round to play the ask not. So we might just have to give up some tempo doing that. They may also flip Thailand here with the China card. Very possible. I think we do have to play the ask not, and I don't think we really want to do Willy Brandt or Portuguese Empire crumbles before we trigger it. We may trigger Portuguese Empire crumbles now that our opponent has already got a foothold in Southern Africa, since it's not going to flip Angola anyway, particularly if we want to use it to coup Sudan, for example, but super about doing that if we can avoid it. Very unfortunate that we haven't had a chance to repair the UK. Okay. So OPEC presumably coming out now, but that gives us the opening that we need to do this. Okay, nice. What does salt get us? A lot of things at this point. What does it get us? Voice of America, grain sales. Very good. Truman, Sadat. Okay, Truman not particularly relevant right now. Neutral cards, all the big mid cards. Red Scare would be nice. I think red scaring on the salting last AR may actually be the play here now. OPEC for 6, obviously very nice for them. Yeah, salting last AR may be the place to go. left. Let's be close on kitchen debates, I would have thought. We've got colonial rearguards. Which, rather than filling up of African countries, I think I'm pretty happy to just do this way. Force our opponent to spend their next AR doing some stuff in Africa, and South Africa was going to be one that I was going to try and fill up for kitchen debates anyway. Let's just do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 perhaps. 1, 2, I may have miscounted. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I might have started that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, we might be even. So perhaps taking South Africa here will do it. I have to travel, so playing on my phone from now on. Okay. So I think we can possibly get these kitchen debates points here. Let's have a look. Miscounted somewhere along the way. Is that where we want to be? I think so. I don't really want to give them the one ops coup on Mexico. Sorry, the one influence coup on Mexico though for control. So since that's definitely going to be scored next turn. 1, 2. We'll still look for this South America domination for next turn when there's a reshuffle. Okay, so all that Africa play eventually paid off, which is nice. It was hanging there for a while, but that colonial rearguards was obviously perfectly timed. Okay, so dominated now, but thankfully we have the relevant counter, which we've been holding on to. Which, you know, I mean, obviously feels nice when you can break control of all 3 countries that card affects, and they've just spent some influence in them. Yeah, that's very nice. So kitchen debates is now live. Hopefully we can net those VPs in our last AR or salt. I don't know. Maybe we'll headline kitchen debates actually. Yeah. Oh, very nice. That worked out extremely well. Very fortunate. Okay, so if we go up to DEFCON 5, I think that's not a huge problem for us here if we get Red Scare. Okay, so not the best hand, but, you know, we did get that Red Scare, thankfully. So we're going to be jamming that. Pope is going to be nice. Not break control, but get us close in Poland. In solidarity range, as Paul often does. And also we've still got Eastern European unrest. I don't think it's in the deck in the mid-war actually, is it? Our opponent might have space raced it on a turn if I remember correctly. It's a space race on turn 3. Okay. So they get 5 from Middle East, that's pretty sweet for them. Fine. let's see what kind of damage they can inflict / repair here. So we probably, what do we want to do in terms of coups and realignments? There's not really too much particularly attractive. Realigning Iraq, not
I believe
amazing,
that this nation should commit
given
itself
that we're at -1.
to achieving the goal
Realign Pakistan at
before
0.
this decade is
Meh.
out of landing a man on the moon and returning
Realign
him
North
safely
Korea
to the earth.
at -1. Nah. Really, it's probably coups. Coups are repairing. Can't really steal Venezuela because we have such a low ups hand. So yeah, I think we're going to have to go for coups. The ploy didn't really work out because of the cards we drew. Like, we didn't draw any scoring cards for relevant regions, and we drew low ups cards in general, so that we can't make use of the action rounds particularly well where we're not couing. Also, when you red scare after salt negotiations, obviously red scare couing is the thing that you want to be doing. So it's always a bit of a risky play. But despite them potentially getting 2 coups here, I still think red scare is enough of a burden with it, and probably the most powerful card that we had available to us, although you could make arguments for obviously any of the powerful mid-war cards. So yeah, I'm enforcing them to coup Nigeria with a 4-ops card. Don't mind when that. Let's go with... Nigeria back rather than Venezuela. It's really unfortunate. I think we're going to have to use the UN intervention socialist governments to take Venezuela, which means I want to probably use Pope. See, the problem with both Willy Brandt and liberation theology is we don't really want to trigger either of them. We really don't want to trigger this. We can't trigger this and actually spend the 2 from it. Going to do here instead. We're going to UN intervention to take Venezuela. Control. It's annoying that we drew Allende this turn as well. We can try and realign them out of Zaire, but I'm just not really that fussed about it. We already scored Africa for 7 and we're far ahead anyway in that region, so not too fussed. I'm probably going to use Pope John Paul to take Peru. Yep. Okay, so I'm definitely going to do that now. Not right now, though. Now we've lost our kitchen debates points, which is a little annoying. Love that. I'm going to use him to... It's 2 influence, isn't it? Yeah. Take Peru. And then we'll try and realign the Allende influence out straight away. We're going to have to space liberation theology. We'll trigger Willy Brandt and use the extra influence to take South Africa, and then if they haven't got any additional battlegrounds, then we should be able to, if they haven't repaired Panama, that is, then we should be able to kitchen debates for the points, but I dare say they will repair Panama here. Let's see. Oh, decall again. Very frustrating. We are just going to go on with the plan. This has not been a good turn for us. That Red Scare certainly didn't turn out particularly well. They played for ops. I mean, you know, it's been a little bit relevant, but they had a powerful hand. Like, you know, 3 playable 4-ops cards is always going to be a powerful opening to any hand. Let's see what else they have. 3 4-ops cards and the region that they were strongest in on the board scored. But we do have to really be careful of Asia here now. They obviously use decoll there to also put the extra one in Thailand, meaning that it is flippable again by the China card. So I think if they don't flip it now, then I will use one in West Germany and one in Thailand from Willy Brandt the next day out. Okay, we don't even need to use the one. Yeah, that's nice. So Willy Brandt is now free, which is nice. Protect Canada. We will put just in case. Trigger Willy Brandt, and we will put one in Thailand. South Africa or Chile? I think we're gonna have to. We could always just hold Allende here. We could place the one in Chile with Kitchen Debates and then hope to have a better chance at realigning Allende out next time. I think that may actually be better than giving them the foothold here, because I think this South American situation is playing out reasonably well for us at the moment. And I'm not super keen on giving them another foothold. We do need to be really careful of this Asia issue now, though. Stabilizing in Thailand was good. But what are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we get Japan and Taiwan, we still hold back domination. And because they control all the one-ops countries, they are more vulnerable to us breaking their domination anyway. But, you know, Asia scoring is out there again now, so we have to be really, really careful of this. We also want to make sure that we dominate Africa again very soon. So we'll either place one into Botswana or we might try and realign, depending on what our cards look like next turn. I got now. I mean, yeah, that was a pretty powerful turn for them, with the 3/4s followed up by the decolonization. Given the cards that we had, there wasn't much more we could do than hold the line as we've done. This last influence this turn is going to be very interesting. Okay. I think it's got to be this, although perhaps getting domination back in Africa is more important, as we already dominate South America. Let's do that. I mean, obviously we could have cooed Sudan there instead, but there's no point rolling a 1 and feeling terrible about ourselves when we don't need to. Okay, 5-year plan, OAS founded. Right. Always a good way to use 5-year plan as well. If you've got one of these 1-ops US events that's terrible for you, then turning it into a 3-ops card is totally fair enough. Let's place in Haiti and Nicaragua, I think. It's the best value that we can get to influence, because putting them in Venezuela or Panama is just too easily repaired. And since we do want to be... Oh, okay. Our opponent's giving up, fair enough. Oh dear. That was an accident, oh dear. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this game. It was a very interesting one, and I was actually quite intrigued to see where that was going. I think given the regions that were yet to be scored, we were probably going to come out on top, but yeah, it was certainly going to be an interesting late war. I hope you enjoyed this match, and I look forward to seeing you for the final couple of games in this Twilight Struggle League. Thanks for watching. I've been Jesse Marshall for The Winning Agenda.